7 stories, 7 minutes, everyone's worth repeating. Live on TPR.
Tonight's theme was taught stories about life lessons, both big and small. Tori, what's a lesson that you still think about?
Oh, dude. When I was little, my mom told me never to have kids, to have chickens.
Chickens are cute.
Yeah. And I was like, why? And she's like, well, when they're bad, you can just eat them.
Facts.
And I'm like, I'm poor. Yeah. What about you?
So there's something that my nana would always say is la vida da muchas vueltas, which means the world does a lot of turns. So it's not your turn right now. It will be eventually. So hang in there.
I was so much more wholesome than my mom and the chickens. Shit. All right. Well, we're going to get right into it. We have 7 stories for you. Are you guys ready? Let me hear it. The first storyteller is Don Mathis. Don is going to share a story about a teacher's lesson that didn't quite age well.
Give it up for Matt.
It was 1962, about the time I learned to think. The year before JFK, I was an Army brat over at Fort Sam Houston, Robert G. Cole Junior Senior High School. And I had a teacher that year. His name was Mr. Reading, a very appropriate name for a reading teacher. So Robert G. Cole Junior Senior High School, we were all military dependents. I was the son of a sergeant, and everybody's dad would move every 2 years. Might be a different city or a new state, sometimes a foreign country. But we didn't have a community. We would constantly be on the move. But Mr. Reading made a community for us and gave us a sense of belonging. He had a speed reading projector. I don't think they make those anymore. Every week, he would increase the number of words per minute that the text would flash by. And so we'd start at 80, 90, 100 words a minute, and it was difficult. It was challenging. It was effective. It was a good way to learn to read. He taught us how to read and what to read for. We read The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. And the winner of the lottery does not get a prize. Quite the opposite. Well, I kind of read between the lines. For me, the draft was way, way far away. It was 6 years away. It was just non-existent for me. But that story stayed with me. Another story, Ambrose Bierce, an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Yeah, a war story. The guy's a prisoner of war, but it's a story also of life and death and war. Another premonition of the Vietnam War, which is just ahead for me. So, Mr. Reading, well, sometimes, it was, about irony and symbolism and foreshadowing, but then other times he was just out of the blue. One day he talked about what to do if a guy bullies you. If a guy hits you, he says, you just hit him back. And I said, well, that makes sense to me. I didn't have to write that down. And so a week later, I'm sitting in the classroom, and this guy behind me, he thumps in the back of my head. And I try to ignore it, and he pulls my hair, and I ignored it, and he slaps my neck, and I tell him to stop it. But every time Mr. Reading had his back turned, the guy would do it again. So I remember the lesson from the week before, and so I just turned around, I smacked the guy. it was a loud, fleshy smack. The whole class heard it. Mr. Reed hears the commotion. He turns around. What's going on? The bully. This is the bully. He was a freckle-faced kid, sandy hair. He bullied everybody everywhere, in the bathrooms, in the hallways, the playground. He might give you a wet willy in the ear or wedge you in your underwear, push your face in the water fountain, trip you on the playground. Mr. Reading, this guy just turned around and smacked me in the face for no reason. And Mr. Reading, well, he wanted to get both sides of the story. Well, why'd you smack him? I said, well, I remember your story about how to deal with a bully. He kind of smiled at himself and as if to resolve, I'll never teach that lesson again. So he couldn't send us to the principal's office because he would be implicated, that's for sure. So he resolved it right there in the classroom. He made me and the menace shake hands and apologize to each other, and then neither one of us meant it. But you know what? That guy never bullied me again. So there was a lot of lessons that one of the lessons is just to stay open for new learning experiences. About 10 years later, I went, there was another bully in my life, but this situation was different. This bully had his buddies with him. I went to pick up my girlfriend at her house, and her big brothers were there, and I guess they were feeling protective of little sister. She said she was 18, but maybe she wasn't. But I got the impression these guys really didn't think I was going to respect her in the morning, or that my affection was not honest or something. But and I was just, trying to explain, but I didn't even see the first punch coming. I didn't see it. I saw the second punch coming. The second punch came out of my left eye as I was falling to the ground. I'm there on the ground. I passed out. Maybe I fainted. Maybe I was knocked unconscious. I woke up and they were still kicking me. And I just had to creep away from that. And so I think, well, sometimes it's better to crawl away than to stand your ground. So the girlfriend, she put the Band-Aids on it and kissed the bruises and made it all better. And that was another learning experience. Maybe sometimes getting your ass kicked is worth it. But I'll never forget Mr. Reading. May the learning experiences never end. Thank you.
Wait, how old was she? Like, what the... Okay, 19. Okay. Oh, I was about to call the cops. That's exciting. I really like that you got to take her out in the end. You showed that guy. I love it. What'd you guys think? Okay, never mind.
I needed a guy like Mr. Reading in my life.
I know. Although I do believe you hit the bully. Yeah. You guys know? Okay, we're not hitting him. Okay, cool.
Lovers, not fighters.
All right. Okay, well.
Our next storyteller is Nikki Allen. Nikki shares a story about the peace she found in breath.
Please put your hands together for Nasreen Nikki Allen.
Can you continue? Hi. All right. Thank you. So it's around 1 p.m. and I feel another sensation from my contractions coming on. And I'm in active labor at this point. I just go into my body. That's the only place I can go. I find my breath. I take a big inhale in and a long sigh out. But my labor actually began around 3 a.m. I woke up, which was not unusual, right? Because pregnant women, even really early on, are waking up every night to pee. So this was different, though. When I woke up, I I noticed that I was wet. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't pee my pants, right? But I also noticed I was having a contraction. And I'd been having Braxton Hicks, right? But this felt different. This was not in the lower part of my belly. And it had been happening like right before bed when I was getting those. This was like an all-encompassing belly feel. And I was like, okay, interesting. Let me go check this out. So I went to the bathroom. And sure enough, my water had broke. So at that time, I think back, I'm like, all right, in the birthing class, the doula was actually telling us like it's so rare for labor to start with water breaking. But here was mine. And I'm like, okay, so I'm having like a typical Hollywood birth, right? Here we go. So I smiled to myself. I'm feeling a bit excited, but I don't want to wake my husband up just yet. I kind of want to gauge where I'm at. So I go and I lay back down and I just flow with it. I'm breathing, noticing, kind of timing. I can't really tell. I mean, I feel them like they seem to be getting closer together, which is what I want to happen, right? That means baby's closer to coming out. So about an hour later, so 4 a.m., I wake up my husband. I'm like, babe, we're in labor. What do you mean we're in labor? Well, my water broke and I've been having contractions now. And he's like, well, how far apart are they? What's happening? And I'm like, it's all right. Like, I haven't really been timing it, but I've been laying here and they seem like they're getting closer together. So he's like, okay, so do we need to call the midwife yet? No. Mm-mm. So I get an app that I had already downloaded and I start timing my contractions. I know at this point, right? I'm like, I'm ready. I am physically, mentally, spiritually ready for this. I've been preparing for this with yoga, with breath, with meditation. So I'm chill. So contraction starts. I hit the timer. I start to go in and out of sleep. I doze off. I'll wake up and my contraction looks like it lasted 30 minutes. I'm like, no. Okay, I need to kind of stay awake. I need to see where I'm at. So finally, I reach a point where I'm awake, still excited though, and they're getting closer together. So I decide, let me call the midwife, let her know this is happening. So this is about 6:30 now. And she asks where I'm at. I think she could tell over the phone, my voice was excited. I wasn't in active labor yet, right? I'm in early stages. I'm like, woohoo, having a baby. And so she's like, keep timing it. Give us a call back in a little bit. We want to look for, so I lived in Austin at the time, so it's easy to remember. The area code in Austin is 512. So contractions, they're at least 5 minutes apart, lasting for at least a minute, and that's been happening for 2 hours. So those are my magic numbers. So I continue on. They start to get more intense. I can tell now because I'm no longer excited. And when it starts, I'm like, okay, here we are. In. So right around 9 o'clock, I call the midwife, another midwife on duty, let her know what's going on. She's like, okay, yeah, come in. So I go in, she checks me out. At this time, about 4 centimeters. And she's like, we're not going to check you in just yet. Go out, walk around, maybe go home if you want to do that. I'm thinking, walk around? Are you crazy? I'm not. That would have been like, da-da-da-da. So we went home and I thought, I'm in for a marathon. I should probably try eating something at this point. And my husband was so sweet. He made food and he came up and I'm like right before a contraction is starting and I'm like, take that out. And he is trying to preoccupy his time. So he puts it on YouTube, his favorite thing, right? And there's just people chattering because he likes to watch how these people live. And I'm like, nope, turn that off. And there's this weird, time comes together and apart, and you're in this weird space when you get into active labor. So like that hour that I was at home flew by, and before I knew it, we were heading back into the birthing center. So she checks me in. She's like, ready to go? Do you want me to get a birth tub ready for you? Hell yes. Yes, I do. Thanks. So I hang out there. I'm ready. I'm envisioning at this point. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get into the room. It's calm and serene. I'm going to get into the tub. This is going to feel a lot better. I can breathe. It's going to be fine. So I get into the room. I get on the bed first because the contractions are really coming now. Luckily, there was like a nice little ball that I could hold on to and just kind of like, oh, this is happening. And then I got into the tub. And it felt so amazing just to be in water and calm and with my breath. And then I reached a point rather quickly, I thought. I noticed within myself, oh, I don't know if I can continue. How long is this going to take? I didn't go back to the birthing class in my mind and what the doula said about the different parts of labor, but now that I have the knowledge behind it, I was in transition. I was nearing the end. I fell asleep. I passed out. I didn't dream about anything. And I don't know how long I was asleep. And I woke up and suddenly I felt the urge to push, which I thought was weird because I'm like, I know first births usually take roughly about 24 hours. It hasn't been that long. So I tell my husband, I feel like I need to push. He's like, okay. So I start going with it. With each contraction, I start bearing down. They guide me out of the tub and onto the bed. I have that lovely ball that I can hold on to, which is so great because when you're pushing, it's like you can just squeeze the ball. So, not too long into pushing, maybe 15 minutes or so, I felt the ring of fire. This was the most painful sensation. As my daughter was crowning and the midwife said, we see her head. Do you want to reach back and touch it? Nope, let's get her out. So about 2 more pushes later, my daughter's out. I reach underneath me, I pull her to my chest and turn around and lay down and bask in the glow of all the oxytocin that is flowing through my body and how amazing I feel that I just did this. And I wanted every woman to feel that magic. So that's why I continued on with this journey. And that's why I teach women prenatal yoga, and I'm a birth doula. Thank you so much.
Yeah, mine wasn't that beautiful.
Girl, I was like, give me the drugs. Yeah. Squeezing like anybody that walked by, like, help. That's great. Would not do again. But I would do that. That sounds great. But like for a class, not for a whole 9 months or whatever. Just one class. Okay. You ready to have another baby together? No? Okay.
With you, absolutely.
With you? Absolutely. I'm going to be a terrible dad. Our next storyteller is Tracie Shelton. Why do you laugh that hard about me being a bad dad? Be a damn good dad. Okay. Like, let's go. Our next storyteller is Tracie Shelton. Tracie is going to share a story about finding the good in food.
Put your hands together for Tracie Shelton. Thank you. So, I'm a mom's mom. I know the who, what, when, where, why, how of everything that has to do with my children and often their friends.
I'm that mom that when there are walnuts in the brownies or peanuts in the classroom, I kind of gotta look at you a little bit. Now, I haven't always had that deep commitment to the allergens that we're putting into the classroom. That happened after the birth of my last child, Theodore, my little gift from God. And that's actually the literal translation of his name. Unlike my other cherubs who had perfect ABGARD scores, topping the charts, right? These kids, little Theodore was born with lots of medical issues, to include a heart murmur and web vocal folds. I spent a lot of time at the doctor. And so when this little kid got off the breast and started to eat table food and he was not acting like the other kids, I became concerned, right? This was a child who, when we would go to Chick-fil-A for a treat, he would turn beet red after eating 2 French fries. And there is the incident that took us to the next doctor, and that's when he ate a roll off my plate that also had salmon on it. The poor baby could not breathe. I was traumatized, scared to death. So to another doctor I went to get allergy testing. So if you've ever had allergy testing before, they start with the control. And so the control is designed to help you know that it's really true, that you have any particular allergies. My kid, the control was raised and every allergen they tested him for was raised. So I was told he doesn't have allergies. Because if he had allergies, everything wouldn't be raised that way, right? That didn't sound right to me because I had just had to revive this kid after he ate the roll. But okay. Now, he'd also been having some problems with his digestion. So they did more tests and they said, oh, but he's got some eosinophils in his belly. So we're going to give you this medicine and just be careful. Everything will be okay. And so I did. We gave him the medicine and we went on our way. About a year later, my family had the opportunity to move to the center of Europe. We were thrilled to land in Brussels, Belgium at the end of summer and begin to explore. There was so much to do and see, and we could not wait to get into all of it. Now, behind finding a school for my little cherubs, the first thing that I had to do was find a doctor for my baby. How fortunate I was to find an amazing medical team. These folks read our reports from the US. They listened to our stories. They asked lots of questions. And then they tested him again. And what they found was, yeah, for sure, he's got allergies. And to the big ones, right? To the ones that we're scared to have in the classrooms. Those are generally eggs, soy, peanuts. And he's anaphylactic, by the way, to fish. Who knew? And they tested his gut and they found that he had so many eosinophils inside of his belly that he was diagnosed with eosinophilia, which I know is a big old word for your gut's messed up and we got to get it fixed. So they said our approach, though, is going to be different. It's going to be 2-pronged. We're going to give you a little bit of medicine, but only for a little bit of time. And we're going to ask you to change the way you eat. We're going to heal this kid from the inside out. Now, if any of you guys have been to Europe, they live a little differently than we do. Definitely live differently than we did when we were home. In Europe, there are not a lot of fast food places, so you're not finding McDonald's or Chick-fil-A on every corner. People go to restaurants for dinner when they're going out, and they stay all night. Like all night. They get there at 6, they'll leave at like 10 or 11. They eat, they drink, they have wine, they have great conversation. They're not turning over the tables there. It's a more relaxed environment and atmosphere. And they also shop local. They buy their food fresh, they go to markets, they walk where they're going. On my street alone, in my little subdivision, Crinum is where we lived, I had a butcher, a baker, no candlestick maker. But I did have a pharmacist around the corner who did my compounding, and I was a 15-minute walk from a local food market. I got to know these people very well because they were going to be instrumental in helping me save this kid. We did it. We changed the way we ate. We ate fresh, we ate local, and my kid got better. We got off medicine. He felt better. Now, my big kids were sad because they were eating sun butter. But other than that, all was well with the world. And it was important to me that I come back to the United States and I teach other people who didn't know, like I didn't know, about food and how to leverage food as medicine. In my mind's eye, it was workshops and hands-on programming. It was going to be so great, except I wasn't quite sure how. When we moved back to the United States, I had the privilege to start being a business advisor and coach. And so what does that mean, really? I help folks develop, design, and implement the roadmap to their business's success. My initial clients, tons of them were, as luck would have it, food businesses. And they were stuck. Because they didn't have a commercial place to cook, they weren't able to move their business beyond a farmer's market. Ask me later why that's important to you, to what you buy and who you eat it from. And so I thought, I'm going to change my game plan. Now I'm going to solve their problem, which was a place for them to cook so that they could sell to the general public. And I'm going to leverage those people to help me teach other folks about food as medicine, what I learned with my Theodore, right? Brilliant plan. Except, I'm really scared. And that fear was holding me back. I wasn't quite sure what to do. I didn't think that I could really do it. In my mind, it sounded great. And when I wrote it down, it looked amazing, but I couldn't figure out how to make it happen. I was doing research. That's what I told my boss. I was doing research and I found a program here in San Antonio that would teach you about how to start a food business. So under the auspice of...
Don't blame us.
Under the auspice of teaching of helping my clients, I took this class. And the first thing they asked us to do was walk through the Venture Challenge. It had 6 modules. They asked us to do all the modules. I'm a firstborn child, and so I followed the rules. I did every module. I turned them in. I got feedback from my mentors. They challenged me. They asked me to do it better and different, and I did. And I was forced to be honest about what I was trying to do. It wasn't really research. It was a business that I wanted to start. The day that the Venture Challenge was due, oh, by the way, the Venture Challenge, you go and you pitch and they give you money if you win. So the day the Venture Challenge was due, my mentor said, are you going to apply? I said, no, not me. I was just following the rules. She said, do. And I did. At 11:58, it was due at midnight, I hit send and everything got uploaded. And then the next week they called me to pitch before the judges. Right? I did it. It was fun. It was super cool, but I still didn't think I could win because I was looking at the powerhouses that were competing against me. And my mentor asked me the next week to please come to the place where they would tell everybody who won. And I thought, my kid has a soccer game. So in my mom genes, I ran over there because I also want to be a team player and to root on for the folks in my cohort and the other people that had participated. And guess whose name they called? Right? Tracie Shelton, Alamo Kitchens. And so up I go. I get the big check. How exciting. My community had said that what you're doing is important and what you're doing should be done and should be honored. And they gave me a lot of money to do it. Woohoo! So I get off the stage. I'm terrified because I've still got this fear and I haven't quite told my boss that it's not research or my family, right? They think that I'm just doing this for my clients. And my friend Crystal said to me, so Tracie, congratulations. What are you going to do with this money? To which I replied with a lot of fear in my heart, but that fear was now pushing me forward. I guess we're going to start a kitchen and teach people how to use food as medicine. Thank you.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
Give
that
it up
was
one more
awesome.
time for
Yes,
Tracie.
absolutely.
An amazing story. Oh my gosh. Have you ever had an allergic reaction to something?
Today,
Today? Oh, you got bit. Oh, okay. She's actually dying right now.
yeah.
I totally ate fish when I was pregnant. And that didn't go well at all. But yeah, it was good at the time, just not after.
I'm Mexican. I can eat a lot of stuff. But,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay, show off. I'm Peruvian, so we can't. All right. We're almost we're almost to it. Yeah.
Our next storyteller is Kevin White. Kevin shares a story about how it takes to stomach.
A strong stomach.
Yeah, a strong stomach for Spanish class.
It does. Spanish class, strong stomach. All right. Give it up for Kevin White, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Okay. When I was in my early teens, I had a less than exceptional educational record. My parents decided they were going to send me off to military school. The military school they sent me to was in Port Gibson, Mississippi. This is on Highway 61, about 30 miles south of Vicksburg, right off the river. The town motto was "Too Beautiful to Burn," which was a quote from Ulysses S. Grant. So we'll just say it didn't have a lot going for it. So this was the mid-1980s. At the time, in that part of Mississippi, and maybe all of Mississippi, the schools were still segregated. This was done by very cheap private academies. The school that I went to had day students, all from the little town of Port Gibson. I will say that the families and the day students were very happy with this arrangement. They probably had a pretty good collection of white sheets and crosses somewhere in their house. So anyhow, I was a boarding student. The boarding students were from normally big cities, kind of progressive kids. Got along really well with them. Another thing about this school, so we had a bonfire one time, and the commandant of cadets showed up dressed to this bonfire, dressed as a Nazi. It was kind of a weird place. Now, also, this commandant of cadets, he had a large painting of John Wayne in a cavalry uniform behind his desk. I was 14 years old. I got caught smoking. I was given the choice to either take a paddling or eat a cigarette. So I chose the paddling. It seemed to be the least invasive of the punishments. So I went in there. The commandant made me grab the corner of his desk, look at the picture of John Wayne in the cavalry uniform, and take it like a man. If he would have hit me one more time, I wouldn't have made it out there under my own power. I will say, the next time I got caught smoking, I ate a cigarette. So I'd been going to school here for a year and a half. Really no improvements at all. So my parents decided they were going to quit spending their money and just let me come home. Now, one of the classes I took was a Spanish class. And I didn't get along. There was mainly day students in there, and I didn't really get along with the students. And the teacher was, about the same. I think she was probably born in the 18-somethings. So I had this thing where anytime she would ask me a question, it didn't matter what the question was. If she looked at me and asked me a question, I would simply look at her with a very straight face and just reply, rojo. And after a while, she quit asking me questions. So anyway, come near the end of the semester, I realize I'm making a 40 in this Spanish class. Now, the class is graded. Half the grade is the class and half the grade is the exam. So I'm making a 40, and I have to make 100 on this final exam in order to pass this class. There's no way in hell this is happening. So sitting in my room, making a cheat sheet, trying to figure out how I'm going to pass Spanish class. And sitting there with my roommate, we had an hour between exams. And my mom used to send me these care packages with all sorts of food and stuff in it. And I was sitting there and I started to open up this food. And I opened up, I think it was like a can of Spam. And My roommate replied how bad it smelled and how gross it looked. And that's when the light bulb went off. So I started pulling out, packs of pudding, beanie weenies, just whatever, and started opening these things up and just mashing them together. And I made just this grossest, you can imagine pudding and beans and weenies and some Spam, maybe a little Dr. Pepper in there, kind of mashed it up and just made the grossest concoction you could think of. So I took this and I put it in a potato chip bag, an open top potato chip bag. I poured it in there and I tried to tape it to the inside of my jacket. Well, it was pretty slimy, so the tape didn't stick. So lo and behold, I had a stapler in my room. So I stapled this bag in my jacket. I grabbed my cheat sheet and I headed off to Macomb Hall, 3-story building built in the, 1850s. It was our big school hall. The Spanish class was on the 3rd floor. It was also the library. Spanish teacher was also the librarian. So I made it up to class, sat down in the back of this kind of unventilated, dark classroom, and started taking my test. So the whole plan was going through my head. I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of this stuff out and, get sick. And I'm going to walk out in the hall and I'm going to use my cheat sheet and I'm going to pass this exam, So I kind of started making these little noises like, oh, And I leaned over and I squeezed a little bit of this out and nobody noticed. I was like in the back of the classroom and no one even noticed what I was doing. So I was like, well, shit, I better try a little harder. So I started heaving and hurling and I bent over and I squeezed this bag. And when I squeezed this bag, this stuff went everywhere. It went all over me, my desk, the person in front of me. It was horrid. The girl in front of me immediately started getting sick. Another girl in the classroom started getting sick. These girls were fighting to get to a trash can and getting sick on the floor. We had some guys that were trying to open windows, these ancient windows. That wasn't working. So I just, in the heat of it all, without thinking, I just kind of did this motion with my hands like, oh, shit. And I got this stuff all over my hair. Now, Miss Bobbitt at this point was screaming so loud for us to get out of the classroom. So we did. We got out of the classroom, those of us that were sick. And there was a race down 3 flights of stairs to make it to a toilet, a trash can, something. And they went for the bathroom. And at this point, I'm just like, well, screw it. I'm covered. So I went back to my dorm room. I changed clothes, got cleaned up, headed back up to the classroom. I got it back into the classroom. The janitor had come in, kind of cleaned everything up. The chaos was down. And when I got there, I realized I don't have my cheat sheet anymore because it was in my other clothes. And so, I felt, well, shit, I won the battle, but I may just lose the war. And I started just trying to fill out this test and accept defeat, And I looked down, and the janitor had missed. There was just this little piece of this fake puke on my desk. So I kept filling out answers, like everything, and then I just took it and I put it on the bottom corner of the test. I went and handed it to Miss Bobbitt. She grabbed this test by the corner. This woman was young, or I thought she was 50 years younger, the way she hit me with that test and knocked it out of my hand, told me to get out of there, come back between exams, and just take the test. So I left. Most people probably would have studied. I didn't. I was laughing too hard. So the next day, before the last exam, I went in there 20 minutes before the last exam of the semester and told Miss Bobbitt, hey, I'm here, to take the exam. She said, well, fill out everything you can. in 20 minutes and I'll grade that. So I answered every answer that I knew, and I handed her that test. I made 100 on my exam, and I passed Spanish in the 9th grade. You know, sometimes I feel bad about it, but then I really think back to the reactions of those day students, and it makes it all worthwhile. You know, I never really told this story to anyone, and unfortunately, I'm not in contact with anyone that I went to school with back then. But the lesson I learned, you know, if you're going to be in a room full of jackasses, you better be resourceful. Thank you.
I would have hated to be his Spanish teacher. Like,
I know. Teachers are so underpaid. The vomit. No. As a former teacher, when he told me that, I was like, I would have failed your ass. I don't care. You keep that inside.
well done.
Our next storyteller is Tally Jorn. Tally, let her hear it. That's okay. Okay, now that's enough. Tally shares a story about a long-ass walk with her mom she'll never forget.
Please join me in welcoming Tally Jorn.
The last time I saw my mother was September 10th, 2017. It was 3 days before she unexpectedly died, and we were going to go for a walk, which was weird for us. We never went on walks. You see, my mom was a lifelong marathon runner, so she started every day with a run, always, no exceptions. And if we were going to see each other, that meant we were going to be running. But the week before that day, my mom had seen the latest doctor in a string of doctors who agreed with all the previous doctors that if my mom wanted to continue to walk for the rest of her life, that she needed to stop running. And my mom was pissed. She was really not happy about not being able to run anymore. And so that day when I saw her, she said, Tally, if we are not going to be running, we're going to be walking for a long fucking time. And I mean, if it's not already apparent, my mom had a really tough exterior. She was hardworking and driven, and she was raised with a lot of adversities in her life. And so she learned to embrace the tools that she was given. But sympathy was not one of them. And, you know, actually, when I was a kid and I would come to her with the little injustices that kids always seem to have, she would always say, Tally, are you looking for sympathy? And she said, you know where you can find it, right? And the answer was always in the dictionary between shit and syphilis. So she didn't have sympathy for any of us. What she had was really high expectations, and that included her too, right? She didn't have any sympathy for herself. So again, that day, if we were not going to be running, we were going to be walking for a long fucking time. And I don't think she meant to get us lost, but we ended up walking for 3.5 hours around downtown Houston, which, I mean, I don't think anybody wants to walk around downtown Houston for 3.5 hours. But, you know, it was really weird because we had, when we started out on this walk, it was on a trail that we had walked on, or we'd run on dozens of times, right? It was really close to my grandmother's house. So every time we visited my grandmother, we went for a run on the same trail. And I don't know if it was the walking instead of running that threw us for a loop, or the fact that both of us are really god awful with direction. I still am really terrible. I got lost in this building. I'm really bad at direction. And so we got lost, and both of us didn't have our phones on us. We had forgotten them at the house. So we got to talk for a really long time. You know, my mom was kind of the person was always on the move, really quickly on the move. And that we were really forced to slow down that day. And, when you spend a lot of time slowly walking next to someone, they open up and they start to talk. And my mom didn't have a problem with talking as it was. So she talked for a long time. And naturally, the conversation flowed into her work. Her work was was low-hanging fruit, talking about work. It was a really big part of her life. You see, when she moved to the Rio Grande Valley in the early 1990s, she started her own architecture firm. It was called Megamorphosis Design, which was a play on her name, Meg, and then mega, big, and then metamorphosis, right? The word meaning a total and complete change. And so as a founder of a company, her work was, again, a really big part of her identity and her life. So it was pretty frequent that we would talk about her work, but that day was kind of different. Like, for some reason, she just started kind of reflecting on it. And she started telling me that when she ultimately retired one day and left the Rio Grande Valley, she felt like she could be proud because she felt like she had made a positive impact on her community. And she's like, I think I'll be leaving the Valley for the better. And she explained that it was because in her mind that these buildings that she had designed and these art installations she had commissioned and the wellness coalition she founded were all like tangible examples of making the community a better place in her mind, right? So as she was sharing that, we were, again, walking around this really busy part of Houston, and there were other people that were walking, and then there were also some runners. And I think my mom was like longingly looking at the runners. It could have been like a jealous rage. The jury is still out. I don't know, but she was like looking around us, and there was this woman that was visibly lost. She was looking at her phone and like looking at the buildings around us, and clearly like she didn't know where she was. And we were lost, but my mom decides that it's like her moment to spring into action. And she's like, well, where are you trying to go? And my mom was, one, bad with directions, again, two, really bad with technology, but she like starts like trying to like help this woman. She's clearly making the situation worse. And this woman also did not ask us for help, but my mom is trying to help. And as she's trying to help, another woman who is running starts running towards us, and she's focused. She's, again, running. And my mom leaps in front of this woman that I guess she perceives to be a Houston native. And she's like, hey, are you from here? And the woman, clearly jostled and caught off guard, has to take her headphones out. And she's like, what? And my mom is like, are you from here? And the woman's like, well, I mean, I've lived here for 15 years. And my mom's like, she's lost. Can you help her? And the woman, she was, again, caught off guard, but she kind of reluctantly agrees. And she's like, I mean, okay. So my mom's like, great. And then just takes off and starts walking again. And I have to kind of run to catch up with her a little bit, or jog to catch up. And then we continued on our way, and we were lost for at least another hour after that. We missed the doctor's appointment for my grandmother, the whole reason we were in town. But I've had a lot of time to think about that walk since then and kind of what it was really all about. And, my mom seemed to really believe that her impact in the community that she would one day leave was a result of these buildings and, her vision for change. But I don't really think that that's all that it was. I think that her vision for us, right, the expectations she had for all of us, that we could be the vehicles for change, that we can ultimately be a megamorphosis ourselves, is really what it was all about. So, thank you.
Anybody?
Guys, one more time for Tally's mom. A beautiful tribute. And I like that she sounded a little bitchy like me.
Anybody trying to save the valley is okay in my book.
I know, yeah. Let's do it. Megamorphosis. Let's do it together. Let's all turn. Okay, never mind.
Our next storyteller is Ayah Hamza. Ayah shares a story about a night she considered becoming an artist. Let's all welcome Ayah.
Let's go.
At the peak of the Black Lives Matter movement, I was in Fort Worth, and I was helping the Southside community paint a mural of Breonna Taylor. There was a group of guys that were there, and they were airbrushing details on the mural. And one of them turned to me and asked if I had ever airbrushed before. I said I hadn't, and he asked me if I'd like to try. So I said yes, and I gave it a go. While I was airbrushing, he asked me if I'd ever tattooed before. I said no, I hadn't, and he asked me if I'd like to learn. Now, for me, that is an obvious yes. I love learning random ass skills. Some people like to bring desserts and sides to a party. I want to bring a needle and permanently alter your body. So we exchanged numbers, and he tells me to come to his studio after his last client. I get home, I get a text around 11 p.m., and he tells me that he's done and to head on over. So I tell my roommate where I'm going, put in the address, and I head out. While I'm driving, I realize that I'm getting deeper and deeper into a residential area. Things are getting darker and darker. The street lamps are disappearing. The houses are looking abandoned and dilapidated. It's just definitely nowhere that I'd open a business. And so at this point, anyone with like an average sense of survival skills would probably turn the car around and go home. But I'm not your average person. And my gut feeling has been heavily influenced by growing up in the safety of a small town. So I kept going. And I find myself parking in front of this house. It's kind of worn down, vinyl siding, just this one eerie porch light. It's just not exactly where I thought I'd be. So I texted my roommate just to be safe. And I was like, hey, this is the situation. I'm going to share my location with you. Now, the problem with this is, there's a lot of problems with this situation. But the problem here is that my roommate at the time was equally as delusional, if not more. So she just shoots me back a text saying like, okay, cool, have fun. Call me if you need help. As if a serial killer would let me be like, hey, could you just hold off on slitting my throat for like 5 minutes? I just need to make a quick phone call. Anyway, I go in, and to be fair, in my defense, I'm 29 now, and this happened way back when I was like 26. So I walk in, and I realize I'm stepping into a one-bedroom home turned tattoo studio. And so his bed is over here on the right side. He's got a TV right there. Across on that wall, there's like a massage/tattoo table situation. And then behind it is a massive mural of Jesus engraved in wood. And ironically, that did not make me feel any safer. In front of that table, there was a metal surgical table, and on it were a bunch of sharp tools and a big slab of fake skin. For those of you who are unfamiliar with fake skin, or what you and Jesus probably hope is fake skin, it usually looks like a 4x4 slab. It kind of this like rubbery, thick material. The top layer's thinner, flesh-colored, supposed to be the skin. And then the bottom layer's thicker, red, and supposed to be what's under the skin, so essentially blood. And the first thing he teaches me is how to sanitize all the sharp tools and the needles. So we do that. And then he teaches me how to do some line work. And honestly, I was not shabby. Like, if all of us right now were in prison, getting makeshift tattoos of apple outlines, I would be in your top 3 for sure. So I'm sitting there, I'm doing the line work. I'm living out my Miami Ink dreams. I am like not even in the room. I am 5 to 10 years ahead. I am thinking about apprenticeships, my tattoo side gig, my signature tramp stamps, everything. And then suddenly I hear this sensual Latino music come on. And for those of you that are familiar, it was definitely Bad Bunny. And then he lights a joint. And then I see the lights dim. And then my light bulb goes off finally. And I'm like, oh, shit. I see what's going on now. Now, some of you probably saw what was going on the minute I got a late night text from a man I didn't know at 11 p.m. telling me to come over. But some of us choose to believe that strange men want to teach women they don't know how to tattoo. So I get up and I grab my bag of bad first date excuses and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's so late. I really gotta go. Thank you so much for the tattoo lesson. Can't wait for the next one. And as I'm walking out, he grabs my arm and he pulls me toward him and he asks, can I kiss you? Now, honestly, super polite for a serial killer. Imagine if every serial killer asked for consent. I said no. I gave him a few excuses because he was looking real sad bunny at that point. And he let me go. So I left, and my tattoo career abruptly ended at that time. And now look at me. I was forced to become a doctor. I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive him, honestly. So if you take one very highly specific lesson away today, I want you to learn this. If a man that you don't know texts you at midnight, tells you that he wants you to come over so he can teach you how to tattoo, maybe don't go. Or you do go, and then you get to tell your story publicly on the radio. Or Dateline.
Yeah, I'm so glad you survived that.
I
You're
know.
adorable. Couldn't stand
What
it.
small town was this? Why so trusting? As someone who was married to a tattoo artist, they're all just kidding. just start trashing him. We got to the last storyteller. Are you guys sad? Okay, well, we're still gonna do it. Our final storyteller of the night is Rita Charbeneau. Did I do it right? Okay, stop. I'm not done. Rita shares a story about boys, the country, and idle time.
Please welcome our final storyteller, Rita.
I'm going to take everybody back to 1971. I encountered a young man who happened to be the son of our small town mayor, who was just could not wait to share some knowledge he had been taught with my brother and my cousin. I was born and raised in a very small town in East Texas. My mother was born and raised in the same town. She actually went to school with the man who is our mayor, his wife, our high school principal, and our superintendent. So a very small town. Our mother liked to have a man in her life. She married young and divorced. And on a trip to San Antonio in 1968 to Hemisphere, we were looking at pictures, and I see one with my mom and some man I didn't know. I flip it over, and it said, teen and her fiance. So I went to our relatives whose house we were at, and I asked her who that was with my mama. She just nonchalantly looked at the picture and said, oh, that's Teen and her first husband, Jelly Bean. Jelly Bean was not my daddy. My dad died October 31st of 1966. Well, by 1970, she was working on her third husband. After a 2-week sabbatical, I guess you could call it. She came back home where my older sister, myself, my brother, and a 1-year-old sister were home alone, taking care of ourselves, and informed us that she had married Marvin. Marvin was now my third stepdad. Well, my older sister had no intention of moving back to Tenaha. At that time, we were living in Nacogdoches because our mom was going to college there. So my older sister packed herself up, got married, and moved to California. The rest of us that were there packed up our stuff and started our next adventure back in Tenaha. Marvin's place was on a few acres of land outside of town. He had this huge chicken house. He had some pigs, some cows, and this big horse that was way too big for my little brother to ride. He was 7 at the time. So the boys, I had a cousin that was 4 years old, and as the oldest person at home, you are responsible for your siblings. You're responsible for all your cousins and any other children who happen to be at the house at that time. Well, my brother and my little cousin loved exploring that land. On July 4th of that year, remember, this is a different time. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. On July 4th, popping fireworks alone. They ran out of fireworks and started throwing matches. This small town I'm from is in the piney woods of East Texas. And if you've ever been around pine trees, you know what happens when those leaves start falling. There's this straw everywhere. Well, after a night of first I had to call the Tenaha Volunteer Fire Department. I spent the night up with my stepdad, Marvin, watching for flare-ups. I knew I had to keep an eye on those 2 boys because they were up to no good. So maybe to keep my brother from getting in trouble, shortly after the fire, my stepdad brings a surprise home for Butch. And I want to say something about my stepdad real quick. Marvin was a very nice man, and eventually he is the dad of my youngest brother who comes along after this story's over. But when he drank hard liquor, he became an abusive asshole. He beat my mom. He beat me. He tried to cut our mother's heart out one time. So this is what we were growing up in. But back to the surprise. Here he comes. He has this horse trailer. Here he comes pulling out of the trailer this tiny, black, beautiful little Shetland pony that my brother named Dinky. Dinky was wild. Marvin said, all you kids got to do is ride her and she'll eventually calm down. So we rode her. My brother ended up having to go to the emergency room to get stitches because Dinky ran him into the barbed wire fence. Dinky threw everybody that got on her. When I stood over Dinky, my feet would touch the ground because she was that small. She was tiny. That horse never calmed down. So late one afternoon in August, I realized I hadn't seen those 2 boys for a while. So I go out to check on them. And I go back in the pasture, and in a distance, I see him out in the horse pen. So I go walking out, and I hear a voice of an older boy. And so I'm listening, not knowing what's going on. I decide to sneak around the back and see what they're doing. I go around to the back of the horse pen, climb over the fence, go walking up to this trio. And I'm just standing there, and here on an overturned, old, rusty wash tub is my 7-year-old brother, hysterically crying, my 4-year-old little freckle-faced redhead cousin, his pants and underwear around his ankles, and the mayor's son, the spoiled little rich kid, is teaching my brother and my cousin how to fuck a horse. Didn't expect that, did ya? So, and y'all remember, this is 1971, a small town in East Texas. So it takes me a minute to even realize what's going on because Dinky, the wild horse, is just standing there in front of these 2 little boys. Dinky, my brother named her Dinky. I guess Naylor, which is the boy's name, kind of ironic, his name is Naylor. Naylor, I guess he sees like crazy in my eyes. He takes off running through the pasture, running towards town, probably to get his dad, the mayor, and leaves me with these two hysterical little boys that I'm not really even sure what to do. And as I think back about this story, we really didn't talk about it. No one talked about it. You know, nowadays you'd be calling Child Protective Services and somebody would be in jail, I'm sure. Years passed, and in the spring of 1993, our brother Butch was diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer. By February of 94, he was gone. At his funeral, family, friends, those guys, God, they're irritating. Everybody gathers. And tradition in our family, after a funeral, you go to the relative's house and everybody drinks and we share stories. Well, here's this group of people walking up towards me. There are these three women, and there's this super tall young man, freckle-faced, red hair. It's that little 4-year-old boy in 1971. And so they come up, and we all hug and talked about how much we enjoyed growing up together in that small town and what fun we had had. And I looked at Lloyd, and he's doing this. And I said to him, I said, Lloyd, you know I have to tell the story. Thank you.